I am seriously considering writing a new book. We've been kicking this around with the publisher about basically the death of the middle class. How this is the first generation that doesn't have easy access to the middle class with a high school diploma. And even if they have a college diploma, they're so far in debt that they may be in their 40s or 50s before they paid off their student loans and they can even afford to have children or get, buy a house, get married. That, how things have changed, how profoundly things have changed as a consequence of 33 years of Reaganomics, and particularly since this massive deregulation that Phil Gramm spearheaded in 1999 and 2000, deregulation of the banks, deregulation of the commodities markets, and then George Bush changing the bankruptcy laws in 2005 so students can't discharge their student loan debt by bankruptcy. I mean, all this stuff. And one of the things that I love to do when I write books is tell stories. So if you have a personal story and you are willing to be mentioned in print, and we can, as long as I know who you are, I have no problem with saying Bill in Indiana and not giving your last name or your address. It won't be in the book. We will conceal your name to whatever extent you want. Or if you'd prefer, if we use your full name and where you are, that's fine. We can tell your story. But if you have a personal story about you or your kids, somebody in your family, well, really, it needs to be your own story. If it's one of your kids or if it's one of your relatives or friends, ask them if they would tell their story. But if you would like your story told in my next book, we're going to spend the next couple of days. Next week, we're putting the proposal together for the publisher. And we just have a couple of days to do this. If you want to send me an email at info, at thomhartmann.com. Thom Hartmann, Thom, Hartmann with 2 N's.com. So you got to spell it right. Info at thomhartmann.com. It's an email address we typically use for customer support for, if people have problems with their podcasts or something like that. So, it's not one that I normally read. In fact, our webmaster is the guy who typically, Nigel is the one who usually reads it because it's usually for questions about podcasts. But I've asked Nigel if he will pull out any emails that are stories from people. If you just want to tell, you don't have to tell your whole long story right now. Just you can give it to me in 3 or 4 sentences or a synopsis, and that you're willing to be quoted in the book. And whether you're being willing to be quoted by name or whether you'd rather I used a pseudonym, but using your name is the best always. So these are real stories. Barbara Ehrenreich did a marvelous book called Nickeled and Dimed, where she did this. She went around the country and told the stories of people and how they were just basically being screwed by their employers. So I want to write that kind of a book, only not Barbara Ehrenreich's book. This will be my book, and not about that topic, but rather about the topic of how you thought you had a middle-class life. You thought you were going to be a member of the middle class, or you were a member of the middle class. And then Reaganomics hit. Or then Bushonomics, which is really double amped it, right? Or then even Clinton's free trade hit. Whatever it may be, something hit and you're not in the middle class anymore. You're screwed. If that's you and if that's your story and you would like me to tell that story in my next book, as I said, we're putting the proposal together over the next couple of days. I'm going to be working on it this weekend a lot. On Sunday, I've basically set the day aside to work on this. And then, a couple hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and then we've got to get it off to the publisher on Thursday. So we already have a couple of stories. We're looking for about a dozen more. So if you have a story of having been dumped out of the middle class that you'd like us to tell, drop us a note to the email address of info at thomhartmann.com, thomhartmann.com. And, I'd love to tell your story.